our new project. Making a new repository in GitHub, making it private for now because we don't want this being public just yet. So we'll create our repository and then we'll set up in desktop, clone. So now we have it cloned on our machine. We are going to go to command line and we're going to go into our folder for that. So demo API. In there now, we're going to assume that you have already installed the global aws-cdk toolset, and also that CDK bootstrap has already been done on your environment. This gets your Amazon environment ready for using CDK. I've already done that, so I'm not going to run it again, and there's loads of tutorials online for that. So now what we're going to do is initiate a new CDK project in Typescript. So CDK init, language TypeScript is going to go ahead and make everything. And if we go into Visual Studio Code, there we go. So it's making all the files now to initiate the project. Once that is done, we are also going to install the CDK libraries. And finally, because we're going to be running lambdas, we're going to install as a dev dependency the types for AWS Lambda. So that'll be all the installs we need to do right now for the CDK and API side of things. So in here we want to have a quick look at what's going on. So our API set up. So one thing to do is we're going to use the env files to set up the project. So you can see here we need to do these. So I have a .env file with my credentials in. It's going to load those in to those parameters. That's right. If we comment that one out, that one. So in my .env file we have these parameters. It's going to load those in, so it knows what account we're dealing with. Then we have the main stack. The default one is for the queue service. We're going to take that out right now, empty that out. And then we've also got a basic test. The test again is, sorry about my pretty code formatter. The test is just for this QSQ as well, so we'll remove that at a later date actually. So we want to make a lambda, so let's make a new folder in the root for our lambdas. And in there, let's make a new file and let's call it demo API. And it'll be a TypeScript file. It's going to have another issue, isn't it? So in this file, we want to import the API Gateway Proxy Handler. So it's from the AWS Lambda package. And then we're going to create our handler for the API gateway. Now, if someone calls this API, we're going to just log it out temporarily. And then what we're going to do is make sure we send back a good response. So status code 200 is going to be a local host. We're going to run it on right now to allowed origins, and we're going to just get an options which returns an applicant a JSON object. So we need to also make a body here. Let's const body. That's going to be an object, and inside that object, I'll call it stats because we're going to throw back some stats. And what we want to do there is put about 8 random figures in. So I'm going to put in a little helper function here. This gives us some random numbers. And then let's bash 8 random numbers into our response. So we're getting our response ready. This could be a query from a database or anything, and then we're going to return it. Put that in by accident, there we go. So that is our API. From there we can go to our stack. Now in this stack we need to tell it to not only configure our Lambda we just made, but also configure the API gateway to let those messages backwards and forwards through AWS to and from our Lambda function. So to start with, let's import what we need for Lambda and API gateway. So coming from the library, then on top of that we will set up our Lambda script. So here we're going to make a handler for our Lambda. It's going to be called demo API handler. It's going to be on node 16. It's going to get the code from our Lambdas folder, and then the handler is the file within there, demo API. So it's going to read through into that file and grab that Lambda out. Because we're then going to use API gateway, we need to set that up in our stack. So this will make a new API gateway instance. So it's going to call it our API. It's going to be a new API gateway. It's going to call it demo API. Short description, deployment options. Here we're going to say stage name is dev. We're going to check for that in our test as well. This is where you may have prod for production environment. You may even version your API. So this will, on the end of your API URL, it will put the / and whatever this stage name is. So if you have different versions of your API, you could use that to version it. So for now, we're just going to put it in a sub stage name of dev. And because it's an open test right now, we're going to stick with allowing all pre-flight options on our headers. So it's going to be fully open. As you become more secure, you might want to lock this down, but for now, for a tutorial, leave it open. It saves a lot of additional configuration. What we then need to do is make sure we have an endpoint. So here we're going to say we're adding a resource. So the API root of this gateway will have a resource called demo data. So that's going to chuck demo data onto the end. So that is the root of our actual API we're discussing. And then we actually need to attach to this endpoint the Lambda function we've specified above. So saying this setup uses this Lambda. So here we're saying we're going to allow a get method on this root, and that's going to load this Lambda function. So here we've set up our Lambda, our API gateway, and connected them together, also making it open. Next thing we can do then is actually synth it. So synthing it is, it processes the code, prepares it for CloudFormation. So what we can do here is just CDK synth. If there's any issues, bugs, misconfigurations, this is where we'll get an error saying so. So it makes CDK out, so that's prepared it, ready to send to AWS now and deploy, which we'll do later. For now, that looks good, so let's actually test it. So back to our test folder. We're not using SQS, so let's remove that. We are going to need all of these though. Let's comment those out. So let's make tests for our Lambda first. So let's put this in here, and we have demo API. Just wait for that to and demo API stack. So we've pasted in that code now. So this is the test for creating the Lambda. Going to make a new instance demo test stack, so it's going to make a new stack, get everything ready for test. This I'm going to leave commented out, but this is just to do some nice console logging of the template. Then this is where we do the actual test. So we want to make sure we have a Lambda function created at the end of this, that it's called demo API handler and it's running node 16. We'll also check the API gateway side as well. So let's put in our API gateway test. Like before, the test code I did here was different objects. So let's just make sure that this stack name matches, that we actually are importing our real stack and connecting up to it. So again, we're making a demo stack, same debug stuff, but then we're making sure that the stage name is dev, that it's called demo API, it's the get method, and we're allowing an options method as well. If we go back to our Lambda, we can see there it is. So let's go back to our test. That looks good. So what we can do is npm run test. There we go, so we passed 2 tests. We successfully created our Lambda and our API gateway. Now what we can do, stage name was test, say it was supposed to be version 3. Let's rerun the test with that, so we know in the Lambda we're actually specifying, so in our stack we're specifying that it's under stage name dev. Let's test it, and find the test, version 3, so that is a discrepancy. That should fail the test. See, fail, right, stage name v3, invalid stage name, expecting dev, here we go. So, sorry, expected v3 but we gave it dev. So if we put that back again, we shall pass. So you can build up all these checks to make sure your whole stack is ready to go. It will do all this before you actually send it to AWS. What we can quickly do as well is let's show this little debug in here. So if we run the test again, as it gets there, it's going to spit out a load of data for us. So here we go. This is the entire object. So this is what we're testing. So everything in here we could put a test against. But for now, we'll leave that out. So that is our test. So now we have our stack ready to go. Let's see about actually deploying it. To deploy it, we're going to use GitHub Actions. So in the root of our project, let's make a GitHub folder. Within that, we'll make a folder called workflows. And then in there, we'll make a new file called main.yaml. This will be our main workflow we run. So we'll give it a name. We don't want this to run every single time we commit to our main branch, but we're going to actually make it only run when we commit to a demo branch. So we know when we want to demo this thing, so we'll push all of our changes into that branch and it will trigger this action. Then we'll set the jobs we want to run. We're going to use Ubuntu latest, the timeout, I think this should complete within 5 minutes, that's for sure. Then we need to set some environment variables, so our credentials for AWS, which we do not want to put in the code base. So these will come from the secrets in GitHub themselves, and we'll set those up shortly. Then we're going to have the steps for the actual run. So the steps, we'll check out our code. Happen to know we need to use node 18 now for this checkout. So these are the notes that come on screen in the actions, and this is actually what the task will be. So we're using node 18, we'll install npm. We'll then use that to install CDK. All our dependencies for our CDK stack, all the code, the library like we installed locally. Then we'll actually build our TypeScript into JavaScript or Node.js. We'll log into our AWS account using the environment variables we've specified up here. And we'll run the test, which we know currently passed locally. We'll synth that to prepare everything ready to go up, and then we'll actually deploy. We're actually going to deploy the name of our stack, which is demo API stack. So if we now push this up to our branch and then merge into a new branch called demo, that should do the deed. We'll quickly set these up as well. So I'll push that up now. Let's go to GitHub. In GitHub, under secrets and variables, we'll see our action secrets, and here I have updated these. So we create a new secret, you give it the name which you use in those actions, and then you put the secret value in there. So we've set up those 3 ready to go. In our root now as well, we will make a new branch, and we'll call it demo. Because this has been made and then pushed to, this should trigger, here we go, the action is now running on the demo branch. Each of these titles you'll see now when you watch the action are the equivalent of these name titles in this file. So we'll be able to step through and see what's going on at what stage. So we've done the first couple, looks good. deploying now. Nice. And then you can do the cleanup at the end just to make sure that everything's shut down again after all these actions have run. What we'll do now as well in AWS demo stack creation in progress. So that's doing all the work behind the scenes now. And then if we go to API gateway, in here you'll see demo data, which we specified in the setup, which would match demo data there in our stack. So our demo API and demo data endpoint. So if we look in the code, our demo API has a REST API like that, and then the resource, the endpoint is demo data, and then we've got a GET request, and we'll have options as well because we specified that in the Lambda setup. Here's the API point, so we'll copy this URL. We see it ends in /dev as well, which is the stage name which we specified again when we set up and we tested. So that's where we would have V2, V3, production, test, etc. Let's open up Postman. Put in a URL, and obviously then our endpoint is, so we go to API gateway, demo API, resources, demo data, get. So we go here, that's a URL, demo data, be a GET request, send that. As if by magic, we now have our 8 random statistics. We send again, we'll get another at random 8 statistics. Also do CDK destroy. This will destroy it, get rid of it, kill the AWS resources associated with it. It'll be done, so we won't be charged anymore for it. It will be absolutely removed from the whole AWS infrastructure. So it's going to ask you if you really want to do it. Yes. Thing is, we have all the code now, we have it all set up, so all we need to do is CDK synth and deploy again if we want to put it back. So that's how you clean up afterwards. So show some additional configuration for a Lambda. Let's say this Lambda is very small or could be very large. We can specify extra parameters. So let's add a memory size in, and this is actually a very small one, so 512 meg will absolutely do. But say you wanted something that was higher processing or needed to load a lot of data from a database, you can chuck that up to 2 gig in there maybe or more. So that just shows how easy it is to change the parameters of a Lambda and know that that's going to deploy exactly the same every single time. Bonus. Let's build a ReactJS front end that reads some of the data from our API. So first thing we need to do, going to be running a mono repo here. So we're going to start a new website folder, a new React app. Because the config at the minute is all for our CDK environment, we're going to tell the config for Typescript on the current environment to ignore website. This is so we can treat our website independently from our CDK stack ourselves. So we're just excluding that from this configuration. So what we can do now is create a new app project. So put this command in. So we're going to create React app. We're going to call it website, and it's going to be based on the TypeScript template. So in the background here, you'll see it'll start making everything it needs to make for this basic website. Once this is done, we'll go into the folder and we'll execute it, and we'll see the lovely default React homepage. go into our website folder, npm run start, and we'll see that lovely homepage. Which will live refresh as we code as well. So there we are. So as it says, edit source app to save and reload. So go into our website folder, source, app tsx. Here we go. So this is that logo. So first of all, let's remove the logo. We don't need the logo there. We'll import the CSS. So the CSS, really, we don't need all of that. In fact, all we need is a body with a dark background, center aligned, and make the text color white. So we'll default to that. Now in the main file, let's install a pie chart. So if we go back to our command line, and new folder, let's cd into there, and install React Minimal pie chart. Just a standard pie chart component. So back in our app, once that's installed, let's copy over some pie chart code. So we will bring in the pie chart. What we can do here is paste it on screen. Now for the component here called chart data, what we can do, just to show the chart for this moment, is have to know the object style for this is an array of value with a number, a color, which is a string, so let's do p3 FFAA, that's probably going to be disgusting, but we'll have a look anyway. And a title, which is optional, so test. So let's see if this behaves on the page. There we go, a lovely green colour pie chart with 34 there. So that component is now on screen. So as we know what this data type has to look like, let's add an interface for it. So that's the pie chart object, and then let's set some state and colors. So we're going to set some colors of grey, red, orange, green. We're going to use state for this. So let's add use state from React. There. I'm going to log when it's loading from our API and then setting that data for the chart. So what we'll do is we'll put back in the call for chart data, so we can do that. Then let's have a handler for that. So let's add a use effect. So again, use effect. Going to use that. We'll have a function called handle fetch data. So let's quickly add in a button. So every time the button is clicked, it's going to handle fetch data as well. So let's make that function. So this function gets the URL. So we have our test here, we know the URL that's going to get our bits of data, so let's paste it in there. Now when we get this data back, we know what it looks like from Postman. So it's stats with 8 numbers. So we will go through that, and we'll use this thing called getColor. So let's put in something that gets the color depending on the value. So if it's less than 10, it's one color. If it's between 10 and 20, it's the second colour, and if it's more than 20, it's the first colour. So if it's a low value, it's green. If it's a medium value, it's orange. If it's a high value, it's red from the array up here. So it's going to process, make the values, make the titles, make the colours of that pie chart, and then send it out. So here we go. So that's our pie chart. If we look at the network tab now, every time we click fetch, it goes and fetches the data from our API, and it renders it in that chart with the appropriate colour. Let's now look at making a more custom component for that. So what we can do is, if we remove all of this custom code, don't need that. We'll also remove our fetch button and our pie chart. Back to just the empty app. We also don't need the interface. We also won't need pie chart. What we're going to do is make a custom component with its own hook. So we make a new folder in here called components, and inside that we're going to call it cake, because what we can do is have a 3-layered pie chart. So in essence it's a cake component. Who wants pie when you can have cake? So we'll make a new file in here. We'll call it cake.tsx to match the component name. New file, try that again. And we'll also add new file index.tx, which will just load that cake component. So that's an easy one, so we just do that. Let's actually name that the correct file. There we go. So that's going to import everything from cake. So let's go to cake. Now what we're going to do here is import the React information we need, import the pie chart we just installed, and also some types that we'll need for defining the types of that data. So we made it ourselves in app.tsx with the colour, the value and the title. This time we're going to use the official type that's built in to React Native minimal pie chart. So if we look now, we'll actually use that. So our data is going to be chart data, an array of that data type. So then we're going to actually create our component. So we'll make a cake. In here we will actually then at the bottom need to export that out. So just make it available. Let's quickly check what that's. Oh, that's fine for now. So let's get our colours. Our colours in. So this is from the last thing, but we're just using this new type now. We're also going to use set loading properly this time. So we'll have a very similar loading function from before. Again, let's go grab that URL, update our fetch to that one. So we have 3 rings now, an outer, a middle and an inner ring. So these rings, depending on the value, are going to have a staggered layering. So if it's a really high value, be red all the way through. It's a slightly medium value, might be red or orange at the outskirts, but maybe an orange or green nearer the middle, so it sort of gives this fan out effect. And then we're also going to put in our use effect for fetching as well. So just handle our fetch data there. Also, when we start loading the data, we're going to make sure we set a loading. So let's have a look. Let's just see it here. We're setting loading false. Let's, as we come into this function, set loading true. Means that when we're waiting for data to come, we can actually show something different. So now in our main component, let's build up what we're going to return. So let's chuck it in and we'll analyze it. So it's going to be 3 pie charts all stacked on top of each other. let's kill that for now. So if it's loading, we'll display it, otherwise we'll just show loading. So there'll be 3 rings. There's an outer ring, which is the pie chart with that first object of data, the second and the third. So, and looking at these parameters for the labels and the size, radius, width, these are parts of the pie chart component which set how big that chart is, so we can actually stack them on top of each other. What we can do then is back in app.tsx we can import and use our cake. So let's import cake from our components, and then let's actually display it on screen. So now this whole pie chart component will be coming from components cake. Just not liking it. Cake. Double check why. I see the issue. Our components folder should be within source, not out on the root of the website. There we go. If we save that now, I'm hoping that will behave. Let's see what's happened on the front end. No. On the spot. I think I might have done a typo there. Right. There we go. So there's our 3 pie charts all stacked on top of each other, and depending on the value we're going to get a different color grade. So again, demo data's loaded. The loading's a bit quick, to be fair, because it is pretty instant, but we've got that loading state that shows loading instead. And yeah, we're getting all this different data and showing a different chart depending on what's going on. So we've made a ReactJS front end that actually reads from a CDK deployed backend API. I think that's pretty much the job done. Thank you for watching.